Roberto, we're all ready?
We're ready to start.
All right. I'd like to welcome everybody today. Before we begin the meeting, let's stand for a moment of silence for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Jamie Girardi.
Here.
John Anderson.
Here.
Peter Hansel.
Here.
Roberto Size. Christopher Poole.
Here.
Chris Williams. Chairman Charles Gray.
Here.
Richard Tonello is present for Chris Williams.
All right. And could you read the proof of publication, please?
The items were published in the Tampa Bay Times on April 20th, 2022, May 18th, 2022, and May 22nd, 2022.
Thank you very much. And do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from the March 3rd and the May 5th Planning
Second.
Commission meetings.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted. We have a second. Any further discussion on the minutes? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries. So I'd like to welcome everybody that's here today. We're the Planning Commission. We're appointed by the County Commissioners, and we meet twice monthly. And we serve as a local planning agency, and we hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners our recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, rezonings, conditional use requests. The Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, and certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. If anyone's in opposition to any land development, code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the appropriate Board of County Commission meeting. For those of you who are not familiar with the format of our meetings, we have three sections: continuances, consent, and regular items. We'll go through the first two, continuance and consent, and deal with those. If, as we read them off, if anybody has anything they'd like to say or ask about any of these, raise your hand as we identify each one, and we'll pull from consent for discussion on the regular items list, and which is the final section. So applicants will have 3 minutes to state their positions and their case and their request, and other people in the audience who may have questions or concerns can have 3 minutes to ask their questions. Then the applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. There is a procedure to request additional time, at least 24 hours before the meeting in writing. I don't know of any requests that have been made. Have there been any requests? No. Thank you. Okay. So for anybody who has a phone, probably everybody in here, this is a good opportunity to silence your phone. And before we start the regular meeting, we want to open the meeting for public comment on anything that's not on the agenda. So there's something that you are here to speak to today that is not on today's agenda, this would be the time to come forward and be sworn. Okay? I don't see anyone. So before we start, let's anyone who plans to give testimony or speak today. If you please stand and raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, so help you God?
All right, thank you. And as you come up, some of you know this, some of you don't. As you come up, you state your name and address, and we'll recognize you as having been sworn in. So with that, I think we can start.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Roberto Becerril, Plan Development Department. I'm here facilitating in the absence of Denise Hernandez. And so we're just gonna start. We have 4 items on consent, 2 of which are continuances. The first item, PC3, is the zoning amendment. It's a continuance for Hale Collier MPUD Master Plan Unit Development for Julian Herden, Walter, and Elizabeth Fensel, the Fensel family, the revocable trust, a rezoning request for AR agricultural residential and R1 rural density residential zoning district to an MPUD to allow for a maximum of 109 single-family detached dwelling units and associated infrastructure on approximately 46.1 acres. This is continued to a date uncertain.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the continuance?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion, and do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. PC4, it's a continuance. An ordinance by the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners amending the Pasco County Land Development Code, Section 1104, flood damage prevention, to bring the county's flood damage prevention regulations in line with the model ordinance approved by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and to coordinate with Chapter 18, Buildings and Buildings Regulations of the Pasco County Code of Ordinances, amending Land Development Code Appendix A definitions and other sections as necessary for internal consistency, incorporating FEMA's most recent flood insurance study for Pasco County, establishing areas of special flood hazards, recodifying building officials to perform analysis for building permit applications on structures within floodplain hazard areas, and providing methods process for such analysis, requiring signed declaration of land restrictions, non-conversion agreements for project proposing to enclose areas under elevated buildings, certain crawl spaces, and certain accessory structures, adding requirements for activities altering sand dunes or mangrove stands in coastal A zones, recodifying elevation information prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy in coastal A zones, recodifying county approval for letters of map changes to FEMA, recodifying encroachment development and fill on properties within floodways, adding or recodifying restrictions on locations of critical facilities, detached accessory structures, manufactured homes, RVs, park trailers, tank decks, patios, and other development of floodways, recodifying FEMA guidance, publications and technical bulletins by reference, changing variance procedures for planning commission to hearing officer processes, requiring data to be provided in areas identified as sheet flow and ponding, providing a variance process for certain agricultural structures, additional specific findings required for variances, providing or amending the following definitions: accessory structures, agricultural structure, coastal A zone, CAZs, critical facilities, declarations of land restrictions, non-conversion agreements, existing manufactured home park or subdivision, expansion to an existing manufactured home park or subdivision, flood hazard areas, historic structures, letter of map change, LOMCs, limit of moderate wave actions, LIMWAs, market value, new manufactured home park or subdivisions, and park trailer, park model, providing for applicability, repealer, providing for severability, inclusion into the Land Development Code, and effective date. This is continued to the July 7th PC meeting.
All right, so we have a request for continuance. I hear a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
And a second. Any further discussion? If not, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay.
Thank you. PC 5, it's on consent. This is zoning amendment for Sandy Lakes Development Corp. Sandy Lakes Purcell, changes in zoning from MPUD, Master Plan Unit Development District Trinity Communities, to an MF1 Multiple Family Medium Density District, together with a voluntary agreed upon deed restriction limiting the number of units to 163, providing for the product will be townhomes that are a maximum of 2 stories in height or other non-apartment multifamily uses, and providing for lot trees and additional planting requirements. And this is PDD 227621.
Okay, and is the applicant present?
Yes.
Okay, anyone here to object?
We have not received any notification of objections.
Okay, nobody's on WebEx?
Nobody signed up for WebEx.
All right, thank you.
Next item is PC 6, PDD 27, I believe there's a typo. It should be 7593. And this is for a zoning amendment for Northern Ridge MPUD Master Plan Unit Development for Northridge, and again, there's another typo, which should be 829 LLC. Rezoning request an AEC Agricultural District, AR State Residential District, and an MPUD Master Plan Unit Development District to an MPUD Master Plan Unit Development to allow for 4,000 square feet of commercial office and 770 single-family detached units on approximately 178.15 acres.
Okay. And the applicant's present? Anyone here to object?
We haven't,
I don't see any objections. We have no one. Okay, I didn't see your hand. That's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll pull it from consent. We'll talk about it. Okay? All right. Anything else, Roberto?
not for consent, so the only item remaining in consent will be PC 5, PDD 227621.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Thank you.
Okay. Modified consent agenda is approved.
Thank you. So we go back to PC 6.
PC 6, yes. So is the applicant's present? Would you like to speak?
Well, usually you let staff.
Oh, I thought they already did that, okay.
Do you want me to read
Go
it
ahead,
again?
You let
Roberto.
staff to present it or no?
Yes, we will have a.
That's right, Orlando, is going to present it, yeah. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Orlando Borras from Current Planning. This is PDD 227593. Oh, sorry, my bad, I got the...
It's okay, and you don't have to speak as fast as Denise.
Oh, my bad. There it goes.
Okay.
Again, it's going to be Norwich MPUD, PDD 227593.
Okay,
My bad. So this is the location map. Currently, the subject property is located in the south side of the County Line Road, approximately to 2 miles west of the Suncoast Parkway. The current zoning districts abutting the subject property are going to be the County Line Road to the north. To the south, we have the AR, Agricultural Rural Zoning District. To the east, we are going to have also an AR, Agricultural Zoning District. And to the west, we're going to have a Residential Mobile Home Zoning District. The future land use of the subject property is Res 1, and the abutting future land use is also Res 1, and industrial light and industrial heavy to the east of the subject property. The applicant is requesting a rezoning from AC, ER, MPUD zoning district to a master plan MPUD development district to allow up to 40,000 square feet of commercial office use and 770 single-family detached units on approximately 178.15 acres. Applicant is also requesting 3 variations from the code. The first one is going to be from the section 805.6, restrictions on post-development wetlands and upland buffers within residential lots and non-residential parcels to allow the developer to enter into a reciprocal easement and maintenance agreement. The second one will be from the LDC 905.261.g, and it's to allow the use of non-invasive plant materials during the PDP stage for buffers. And the third one will be from the section 901.6.d 11, street design and dedication requirements to allow only an emergency exit on the Normandy Street. Now, from the staff analysis on these variations, staff noted for the variation from 805.6 that the easement will be an agreement only for the non-residential part of the subject property. For the use of existing non-invasive plant materials, staff also noted that these will be work between the applicant and staff at the PDP stage. And for the variation from 901.6 D.11, staff also noted that the Normandy Street could be used as an emergency access due to existing homes with driveways on this street. Using Normandy Street only for emergency access will not disrupt or stop traffic circulation in the area. This is the master plan for this MPUD. And the finding of facts for this MPUD, the applicant is also seeking a corresponding comprehensive plan amendment, CPAL 2123, for a change in the future land use from Res 1 to PD, plan development. The subject property is currently unimproved, and the project area is located in the North Market area. Access to the property will be from the County Line Road from the north side, and the applicant is coordinating with the Pasco County and also with Hernando County. The applicant is also requesting a loom, which is also submitted with the master plan to allow an exchange of 70 single family, detached units to 20,000 square feet of commercial use, and the proposed request is consistent with the Pasco County LDC Chapter 400, subsection 402.2 zoning amendment, MPUD, master unit plan development, and with the applicable provisions from the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan. PDD staff recommends approval to the PCC with conditions.
All right. Any questions for Orlando? If not, Ms. Wilhite.
Good afternoon. Barbara Wilhite, 6327 Grand Boulevard, Newport Richey, for the applicant. I'm not sure exactly what the public comment will be, although I did speak to the gentleman briefly before. So let me just be brief and then we can rebut. But our land use now for this property is Res 1. There's a pending land use amendment to PD to allow for up to 4.5 dwelling units per acre. You got to put that in perspective of a couple things and why it has been supported by staff and the comp plan amendment is underway. We're talking about County Line Road North, arterial roadway is planned to be improved. Actually, the state legislature approved $50 million to improve that road in this past session and is pending with the governor. The other thing you have to think about that area is that it is on the county line, and the density that we're seeking for this project is consistent with the density occurring across Hernando County. So what was 30 years ago was appropriate when the Res 1 was placed on the property is no longer the appropriate future land use and the development vision for the property in this area. So I know Terry Pitos is not here today, but he spent time before we made this application and really talking about, you know, what should be the vision for this area of Pasco County, given those particular facts of what's going on in Hernando County, directly across the street from our entrance, and we actually had to change our entrance to line up with a project in Hernando County, so we have our access lines up is the same density as this project. So it's, when you come down Canyon Line Road, it'll be very consistent, so thank you.
Barbara, I don't know if anybody else has a question for Barbara. I know we're going to give you a chance to reply, but just curious about the utilities. Where is that coming from?
So there is an interlocal with Hernando County. I understand that there's some discussions about that interlocal, and so we're trying to get down to the bottom of that, but we have an email from February from Hernando County that they would serve with sewer, and that the Pasco County we would extend the water from the Pasco County utilities.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question, and I don't know if it's for staff or for Barbara, but I guess number 5 on the agenda says access to the property from Caroline Road with approximate 160 feet of right-of-way. It looks like right now there's 50 feet of right-of-way, and that extra 110, how does the process work for that? Does the county work with the applicant to get that right-of-way?
So you're speaking of the right-of-way for County Line Road?
Yeah.
So there's a PD&E that was done in anticipation of how the alignment's going to be for the 4-lane County Line Road North. And for that PD&E, it was selected that
And then you said 4-lane, not 6-lane?
it's 4. Yeah, it's 4.
Okay.
That's
'Cause I was
what's
just
proposed.
Okay. I was thinking of like when you come off of 19 and County Line, it's a 6-lane.
This section
If I'm
is
not
proposed to be 4.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I believe you had some questions about, if you'd like to come up and state your name and address, please. And I think you've been sworn.
Yeah. Kenneth Rakowski. My property is directly south of this proposed development.
Uh-huh.
I've been here 42 years. Moved from Holiday up to Port Richey, and then finally bought this when I came out of the Army. I've lived there my whole life, basically. My daughters went to school there, 3 daughters. And right now, there's not any room for what they're planning. County Line Road, if you look, is 2-lane road, as was mentioned. There is developments on the Hernando County side. There's nothing to get any other way except when you get to either US 19, Shady Hills Road, or the Suncoast Parkway. Where they're planning their entrance, I just heard this, realized it now, that is going to be a hill there, which already Preston Hollow, which is to the east of that, is already having problems because the road is east-west and the sun is either setting or rising during the major part of the commute days. And we're having a big increase of accidents now on County Line Road. And I'm concerned about, this is basically going to be the opening to go ahead and just build this whole area up. And I moved up there to get away from development, and now it's like, here it comes. So I don't know what to say besides that, but, thank you for your time.
Sir,
Yeah.
can you please state your last name again and your address?
Okay. Kenneth Rakowski, 17835 Oxenham Avenue, Spring Hill.
Anybody else? If not, then Barbara.
Let me just, Mike Razor, you want to hop up here and talk about the traffic analysis that you did, and thank you.
Good afternoon. For the record, Michael Razor with Razor Transportation Consulting, 19046 Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, and I have been sworn.
Michael, hold on a second. Do we have any kind of an overhead that everybody can see the configuration of the property and then Michael can point to what he's, a clear understanding, especially for the person who came here to ask about it. Thanks.
Which button was it to get the pointer on here? Does everyone remember?
Careful, one of them explodes.
I'll just try them all, I guess.
Explodes?
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. There you go.
Yeah. That's not. No, none of them are.
Exactly.
Not just you, not just you. Oh, that's oh, yeah.
All right, all right. So you can see the property. It's located one of the large rectangular squares, the one to the east of where the looks like a dirt pit or mine is located. South, right? Yes, right there. And then there's some tracks to the east of that. On the north side of the road, there's another development that was permitted, and I believe it's under construction now in Hernando County. Our access. Our access is planned to align with that other subdivision. Here we go. I believe it's in this general location right here. In any event, that will be a four-way intersection, north-south, east-west. Our traffic study identifies that we will need signalization at some point. And so that would be a signalized location when warrants are met. At this point, the traffic study that we did is, zoning. It's a traditional zoning level traffic study because the commercial uses are yet to be defined. The access evaluation was preliminary in nature. And what that identified is that we're going to need turn lanes at all of our access connections. We're going to need a traffic signal when the warrants are met. It's going to coincide with the location on the north side as well, so it'll be a traffic signal that serves both developments. The issue that was brought up by the gentleman was in regard to the sunsetting and accidents and whatnot. That's really more of a site plan permitting function where we look at site distance and whatnot. If there is a vertical curve, that would certainly need to be addressed. However, since the other project is already ahead of us, I presume that they've looked at that already and identified that that was acceptable because they've got site plan permitting approval through Hernando County and are proceeding with development. So again, that would be something that's looked at a little bit later on down the line.
Sure.
So Mike, on the capacity issue of County Line Road, in its two-lane configuration, does it have enough capacity to handle this project?
So, David, our study looks at County Line Road in two ways. One is the traditional way that's in most of the zoning studies. It looks at it on a generalized basis using the FDOT's generalized service volume tables. That showed deficiency. However, this particular segment of County Line Road is interesting because to our west, the next signalized intersection is Shady Hills Road in Mariner. And to the east, the next signalized intersection is Anderson Snow Road. There's 3.5 miles between the two. So when a detailed analysis is done using the Highway Capacity Manual procedures, that takes into account the running time between the two signals and the delay incurred at those two locations. At both of those locations, County Line Road is a 4-lane section. So it operates as a 4-lane section at the two signals, and so when everything gets computed, the detailed level of service information shows that it is not deficient.
With your project traffic and any...
That's correct. Now, I will also state that those traffic signals currently work because they're on 4-lane segments of County Line Road. I'd indicated to transportation staff, NEMA and Essen specifically, that at the time of meeting the traffic signal warrants, if in fact County Line Road is not already funded and under construction for the 4-laning along our frontage, we would potentially likely need to advance the 4-laning of that segment east and west of our new traffic signal. Putting a traffic signal on the 2-lane road is would not work. So we would need to have a 4-lane segment where the traffic signal is located, whether that be from the DOT project, or if we get to that point first where the traffic signal is warranted, that 4-lane section would need to be implemented by the developer, and we need to talk further about that with the county once we get to that analysis stage.
What is being approved across the street, just so I know? In Hernando?
It's a residential subdivision. I don't recall how many units it has. Does anyone remember that? Around 200, I'm hearing from the applicant.
Okay.
All right.
So just to be clear, whatever access-related improvements staff tells you have to do at site plan approval, you're acknowledging you have to do them, even if that means potentially 4-lane part of County Line Road?
Correct.
Okay.
As indicated in the conditions, not as specific to 4-laning, but of course it's the typical language.
It's pretty broad.
Access
Staff
improvements.
can pretty much make you do whatever they want to.
Yep.
I just want to make sure you're acknowledging that could be effectively 4-lane part of the road.
Correct, and we've discussed that.
Okay. So,
Commissioner, we have Asen, who is with PDD. He'd like to speak.
who is it?
Asen with our transportation.
Oh, okay, Essen, yeah.
Good afternoon, this is Asan Khalil. Since you did review this project specifically, NEMA in our group reviewed this project. I have also looked at it. The generalized tables are a first cut. We look at those to see if the capacity is there on the roadway. Looking at the links, which did show some deficiencies, but when a more microscopic analysis using synchro or HCM procedures, when we follow that, it does show it takes into account the intersections and the geometry at the intersections and the capacity that's available. And they do show that the operation is within our passing parameters that we have. So the level of service on the segments is not an issue. As far as the signal is concerned, it is tied to, as development occurs, the warrant studies will be requested of them. At time when the development, comes up to a level where it warrants a signal, we will ask them to put the signal in. But I think we will do a more detailed study at time of site plan review phase, and that may show that, with the development to the north and their development may show that, the signal may be needed sooner rather than later. But we always put in language that it can always be requested at an early time by the county engineer if county engineer deems it that the study needs to happen sooner and the signal needs to be installed sooner. So I think the applicant understands that part, and the traffic engineer also understands that part.
So can we just also, either the staff or the applicant, address the density issue? I think the gentleman was asserting that this is a rural area. I mean, that's, looking at the map, it's not obvious to me that it is, but if could staff or the applicant address the density and why you feel it's compatible for this area?
I did do that on my presentation, so I'm not sure what I can add to it, but certainly.
Well, I don't know what the lot sizes are around it. In Hernando.
They are larger lots around us, and we have our biggest lots at those adjacencies. I think the question is, should it stay at Res 1, which is where it was 30 years ago, or should there be a change?
Well, let me just ask the question more specifically. Looking at the lot sizes, are your lot sizes going to be comparable to what's in Hernando across the street?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's when we looked at it with Terry Pitos, and sorry he's not here to talk to you himself, but that was the major driving factor, was what is actually going on in the area, looking at it from what's going on with the road, what's proposed with this road, what is going on to the north, the development pattern at the north, and that's why he felt that the project that we're proposing is compatible with this area and what the future of this area is going to be.
Does staff concur? Orlando, do you concur with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Chairman, this is Roberto Becerril. I don't know what conversation Mr. Pitos has had with Mrs. Walhat, but one of the things that we are looking at in the Comprehensive Plan Update 2050 is we understand that there's development pressure from Hernando County coming south. And one of the things that we have been discussing is we don't want to become a suburb to Hernando County either. So this applicant has been provided some areas for commercial and office as well. And that's one of the reasons why I believe this application is also recommended for approval.
Anything else, Ed?
I think staff and the applicant addressed all the comments.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question. If could you guys go to that site plan that was, or the master plan? And then just, okay. Yeah, right there. If you could zoom up at the upper left. And I guess as a question and a comment, I would, so that development in Hernando is just to the north of that westerly access point. So that's where the light would be. I don't know if you could put an arrow up there or the laser up there, but it's the further west.
The answer is yes, the further,
Yeah.
the westernmost
Okay.
access point.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Who's speaking? Oh. Sorry, we have to go in terms, we can't speak more than once, so, yeah. Somebody new? Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna have to come forward, please.
Just to be clear, we're going to have to give Ms. Bullhide a chance for rebuttal.
Yes, I
again.
understand, yeah. Come forward, you're for the applicant or for the?
I'm against this, to be honest with you.
Okay, we're gonna need your name and address, and have you been sworn?
I have not. I apologize, I came a little late.
Okay, take her to jail.
Is there anybody else that has not been sworn in that intends to speak? Okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
So my name is Brandy Lake. I live on the south side of County Line, right off of Oxenham, 18221 Oxenham Avenue. I've got a lot of concerns with this. I just recently moved here in the last couple of years. And as it is, I understand where they're talking this traffic pattern right on County Line Road. But what I haven't heard addressed is the traffic, how it's going to affect the current residents who already reside in this area. Because if you have been there, I understand the traffic analysis. I live there. I deal with this traffic coming to and from work every single day. Getting onto County Line from like Alexson, which is one of the main ways to get to Oxenham, that's already a nightmare to get off of, to get into the area over there and to get onto County Line from there. Increasing and adding 770 homes, not to mention the commercial and that, how is that going to affect that? How they haven't addressed that in the increase in the traffic.
Can you tell us where Oxenham is? Because I don't.
That's this street right here.
South, yeah, just south.
So if you go
okay.
directly south
I don't
of
know where
County
their
Line,
access is, though.
So how does Oxenham get to County Line Road?
Alexson. If you take County Line, like from my house, if you go down I apologize, go down Oxenham, you take a right on Alexson, which is directly off of County Line Road.
That's all the way down here.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not on that property.
So your concern is the intersection of Alex with County Line Road?
Yeah, it's already bad as it is now. You have times where I've seen 5, 6 cars waiting there 10, 15, 20 minutes to get onto County Line as it is. And that's just with the development and that they've done with adding a Dollar Tree, or I apologize, Dollar General right there. With the current traffic and the current houses that are already there, you want to increase that 770 residential homes. That's just going to make that much worse already for the current residents that live there. Not to mention, we live in a fairly quiet neighborhood. You know, everybody that has moved out there has moved in this area because it's peaceful. It's quiet. We all live on an acre plus lots in that whole area all along Alexson. There's nothing behind us but where they're wanting to develop. You're going to take that away from us. We bought our houses there because we wanted that peace and quiet to get away from the busyness of the city, of the suburbs, of everything else going on. And that's taking that away from us. Not to mention us, our children, our families. It's a very quiet community. So that's the traffic and the noise are my biggest concerns for this area and what this development's going to do to it.
Okay.
Can I
Anybody
ask-
else have any questions?
Can I ask the applicant a question related to the Alex intersection
Sure.
with County Line?
Barbara
Barbara or
question?
Mike, so I know you all are showing,
or Mike, either one.
you're showing an interconnect from your property to the west. I assume that property that's at the intersection of Alexson and County Line Road is vacant, correct? You're showing an interconnect to it?
We are, that's correct.
So I guess my question is, once it develops, would traffic be able to get from Alexson over to your new light? Because if they can get to a light, your new light, that in theory would address the concern about them being able to get out on the County Line Road if they can get to your light.
There certainly is we're looking at it here on his phone. There certainly is a stub out to that western property that's vacant, and we are required to provide an interconnection to that property. So if that was a county requirement, that could occur.
I guess right now it's zoned ag though, right? There's also, well, that was gonna be my second question, which is, I don't even know if she would be okay with it, but the other option would be to make Normandale instead of an emergency access, make it a full access so they could get up to your signal. But, I mean, is that something you all would be willing to do if they?
Well, we certainly were concerned that the residents wouldn't want us to have anything but emergency access down there. So that's why we proposed it that way.
Well, but I'm hearing they're having a hard time getting on the County Line Road. If they could get to your signal, that gives them a way to get out on the County Line Road.
We can evaluate that. I can't do it standing here, but we can certainly evaluate that.
Well, can we ask the lady who just came up whether she would support a internal connection to get to your signal?
Okay.
And then, in addition, I want to talk just one more item about the traffic signal. In addition to a traffic signal providing the egress capacity for this project, it will create additional gaps for local street connections east and west of the project, as well as the ability for Alexson Street specifically to make a right turn and a U-turn at that traffic signal, rather than making the direct left, which I can understand would be a difficult movement. We identified it as being difficult in our traffic study, which is why we identified the need for a traffic signal to begin with. So
I understand your point, but I think it's better if they could get to the actual signal. I mean, because I'm envisioning that there won't be much of a gap. Traffic will just stack up in front of Alexson. I mean, once it stops. I don't,
I agree.
I don't know how you're really creating a gap.
In westbound traffic flow, David. Right now, there's no gaps because the traffic
Okay, I
signals
see.
are so far apart.
But if they
So
wanna
there would
make
be
a
a gap
left-
in at least one direction, and that increases the potential for a usable gap to make a direct left turn. But more importantly, the right turn followed by U-turn would be available at that point, which, you know, as we know from DOT, many DOT studies, that's preferred over a direct left.
And I think, thinking of the alternatives that you're going through, the interconnect with a new project as opposed to, which would be the project to the west, would probably be preferable to interconnecting with an existing subdivision that has driveways and so forth. So the opportunity there is when the project to the west comes in.
I don't
make those
disagree with you,
connections.
Barbara, but we have no idea when that project to the west.
The county has a pre-app, they've got a pre-app on that.
Oh, they do?
They
Does
do.
that, staff know anything about that?
Well, probably not, they wouldn't know necessarily, everybody wouldn't know here, but.
What is
there's
it
a
coming
pre-app.
in for, just so I know? Is it commercial?
It's residential, similar residential. So that's where the opportunity is. And they're looking at, with staff, of whether to have a commercial component.
Okay, well, if that's imminent, and I tend to agree with you, that's the better location to give them access to the signal.
Which this project accommodates. Given that connection on the MPD plan that's required to the west.
Well, before this gets to the board, I think staff needs to be prepared to speak to what they're requiring of that applicant. I mean, because I'd like to know that they're requiring that applicant to provide that. The staff doesn't always require it for residential projects. Commercial, they always do, but they don't always require it for residential. So I'd like to know that they are in fact going to require an interconnect between Allison to get over to your signal. Brad, do you know?
I don't think it's been discussed at that level, so I mean, staff can speak for themselves, but.
Yeah, Brad Tippin, Planning and Development. That's not on the radar yet. It's just coming in. It's in the very initial stages, so we're talking a pretty long time before we could even have an initial thought on what we would do there or what could happen there. So I don't know that we can state as part of this project what we would be doing at that time.
I mean, this project is doing what it's supposed to do, which is showing an interconnect.
Right.
But it's only going to be a meaningful interconnect to these residents if it connects to Allison. So.
Right. Theoretically, by
What I'm saying is
code,
I'm
they would be
strongly
required to
suggesting
make a
that staff
similar
require it.
interconnect. They would be required to make a similar interconnect theoretically by code. You know, I
I
can't.
understand that, but I've seen staff allow deviations from that when it's residential.
Correct.
So are you prepared to make sure that happens, is my question.
I can't speak to that until our access management team has looked at everything and done that. I don't want to commit either way. But the general default is to have that type of connection.
Okay, well, I just think if that connection is required, the life of these residents actually may be improved because now they can get to a signal that they previously could not have gotten to.
Oh, I completely agree. Essen, I believe, is on. Yeah, it sounds like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I believe it would make a whole lot of sense when this other parcel develops or comes in for development. That east-west road, I can't read the name, Clarissimo Avenue, maybe? That a connection be established over there.
Well, I don't know if this project is showing their interconnect at Carlissimo.
No, not this project. We're here discussing now this potential pre-app that we're talking about. When that comes in, it makes sense to have them have a connection at Clarissimo. It's a public right way we can possibly connect over there.
But I don't think the project, this current MPUD is showing an interconnect at Carlissimo.
No, they would not.
This one, there's an entire parcel, large parcel between this project and Carlissimo. But the east-west connection criteria that we have in the code, that would be the natural location for it to occur, to provide a connection to Carlissimo and then a connection to the east into this property, wherever they establish
their connection point.
Okay, maybe I'm not making myself clear. Can you pull up the MPD plan for this project that's currently under review? My question is, that arrow that's showing a connection to the west, I don't think that's Carlissimo.
No.
It's too far north.
No, there's an entire parcel that's this size on that side.
So what I'm saying
Yeah,
is
it's too far north.
if the intent is to interconnect with Carlissimo, which seems like a good idea, then we should be showing an arrow on this there too.
My team said, move it up, so we can move it up and produce a new one of these before the board that shows that connection north to be more equivalent with Carlissimo.
So you're willing to interconnect to Carlissimo?
We're willing to get, yeah, we can't make that connection between the vacant, but we can make sure that our connection is equivalent.
Is lined up.
Lined up is the right word.
Basically, does your property dead end in Carlissimo? I mean, does Carlissimo dead end into your property?
No, it dead ends into the property to the west. That's at the pre-app stage with staff. But for us, the comment is that where we're showing our cross-access, our interconnection, is farther south than where it would be to line up with an eventual connection to Carlissimo.
It's about 1/10 of a mile south from county line.
Yeah, I just think these arrows need to line up where staff actually thinks there's viable interconnect.
Understood.
So the existing terminus of Carlissimo is a 1/4 mile west of the westernmost boundary of this site. So wherever that access point is on this site, there's plenty of room for that to meander through the adjacent site. If they're willing to commit to it being closer to make it a cleaner, straighter path, it can certainly do that. But there's a 1/4 mile distance there.
Okay, but the project is...
Ms. Barber, that this proposed development, it's not gated, right? So that the signal can be used by other traffic?
You're speaking about our project?
Yes.
It's not gated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Essen, wherever you are.
Except for your emergency connection to...
Correct. We are going to have that gated, so our traffic's not going into that existing project to the south.
Can we go back to that for 1 second, that emergency access? Because what I'm looking at, if somebody's got the control of the map, could zoom in on that section between Oxenham and the southern property boundary. Somebody can go back to Pasco and Napper. So I'm only seeing one driveway there that might be interfered with if that was full access through on Norman Dow would be the that the cursor's on right there. The rest, it looks like the other properties, their access is from Oxenham, not from Norman Dow.
Yes, Commissioner, that there would only be one immediate driveway on that segment, but traffic going that way would pass all of the other driveways on those other routes along the road.
Understood.
Well, realistically, though, I think it's more likely those people would go north than this traffic from this subdivision would go south. I don't know why traffic from this new subdivision would need to travel south.
Right.
They wouldn't. There's nothing to the south.
No.
So an interconnect is probably going to, in my opinion, help the people to the south more than it's going to help the people to the north. I mean, can we ask the lady who spoke earlier what she thinks the residents' preference would be out there in terms of...
You're going to have to come up to the microphone. Does this line up with that emergency
I'm
exit?
ready to get my steps in today.
So the question is, you raised a concern about being able to get out on County Line Road.
Correct.
This new project, if approved, would have a new signal within their project. My question to you is, would it be better for the residents to get there to that new signal through Carlissimo, kind of an east-west?
So that's where my concern is when they're talking about Carlissimo, that
Well, okay,
runs.
can I finish my question and then you can
Yes.
answer? Would it be better for the residents to get to the new signal through Carlissimo or through Normandow?
I guess I'm not understanding how it would be access to that light through Carlissimo. I mean, are you talking
So-
like go out on Alexson
No,
and take it left
so-
or right on
so they'd-
Carlissimo?
So they're putting a new signal at the sort of the western portion of their project along County Line Road. So there's two ways that we can envision residents of this neighborhood could get to the new signal. One would be to go straight up Normandow into the project to get to the new signal. Or the other would be to go up to Carlissimo, make a right, and then get to the new signal.
Okay, so the signal will be somewhere in this area,
Okay.
and they're talking, somewhere in this area, and they're talking about Carlissimo being continued across here to get to that signal and up, or having it come down the other side here to Nouveau, so you come all the way through this project to that signal. Is there a preference between those two directions? I think it's what he's asking.
I don't know that I would say that there is a preference. I can't imagine the residents on Normandow wanting to have full access. I don't see how that, I mean, there's already a couple driveways there, I know it dead ends, and they're talking about extending that for an emergency access on Normandow. I don't see to be honest, I don't see the residents being happy with that. Because that's gonna, again, with the, that's gonna increase traffic through our neighborhoods.
So you'd rather see it at Carlissimo?
To be honest, I wouldn't rather see it, because with this traffic, you've got kids playing out in the roads and
Well, I
everything.
guess-
How's that going to affect them?
Well, they're putting in a new signal. You don't think it's beneficial to be able to get to the new signal? You just said you couldn't get out on County Line Road because...
Correct. I did say that. I do think it's beneficial. I don't know that that extending Carlissimo, that may be the better option than Normandow,
Okay,
is extending Carlissimo.
okay. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't, I personally, I can't see the people in this proposed subdivision choosing to drive south to the next road south. I can't see the name of it. Oxingham. They're gonna go north. They're not gonna come to Oxingham. There's no reason to. That's why the emergency exit. But they need a connection at some stage to that traffic light. Because like you said, David, I think sooner or later, there's gonna be a backup of traffic going east from that traffic light blocking their road out. What was the name of that road? Alexson. Yeah, and then there'll be no way to get across to make a left-hand turn. Only option would be turn right and make a U-turn. And that won't be easy. So,
I think I'm hearing that the residents' preference is Carlissimo, but then again, Carlissimo is not, apparently, may not happen in the immediate future. I guess it depends on whether somebody comes in for development along it. So, do we know whether the development application that's been submitted includes that Carlissimo piece?
It is just at a pre-app stage. So there isn't a development proposal at that level of detail.
But the pre-app that came in, does it south to Carlissimo.
That project is for the whole rectangle.
That whole 80 acres.
I'm asking, okay, I get it.
So yes, that project includes the property that would be adjacent to the stub out of Carissimo.
Yeah, that's the middle of the first 40 acres there.
So David, this is fascinating. I have no knowledge right now of this pre-app or what's being proposed, but we'll definitely take note of it and ensure that that connection does happen. I have a question for you though. If we end up connecting to the south to Oxingham and creating a public access roadway, whether it's these two projects and out to the signal or coming from the south from Oxingham, are you then creating a public roadway? Would this be a county maintained roadway then? Because now it's open to general public.
Well, it could be county or CDD, either one. It would have to be a public roadway though, yes. So at least the road, the Carlissimo extension over to the signal would have to be a public roadway, or the Normandow extension would have to be a public roadway. But what I'm hearing is this particular project does not intend to gate any of the roadways anyway. So they're going to be county or public roadways anyway.
Okay.
So the issue is going to be the project to the west. Because unless staff makes sure that Carlissimo can be extended over to the new signal, then these people won't be able to get to the light.
Well, I can't speak on that right now without reviewing the project. So once it's here, we can definitely pursue that east-west connection. If that is
Mr.
what
Chairman.
The commission wants us to do.
Mr. Chairman, Whitney Haddox would like to be promoted. She's with the Plan and Development.
Okay. Who is it? Whitney.
Hi, this is Whitney Maddox with Planning and Development. I have some info on the pre-app for this parcel we're discussing. It looks like it's coming in August of later this year, August 17th. And the conceptual that they have right now, again, it's a conceptual, but they have an emergency access connection to Carlissimo, but they also are proposing a connection to the proposed connection of the North Ridge MPUD that they are showing on their western property line. So that's what they have right now. Again, it is a conceptual, but they are suggesting an emergency access connection to Carlissimo.
Okay, well, that won't work.
No.
I mean, not if that's, you're saying that what they're proposing is directly the opposite of what Essen's suggesting. Just so we're clear.
That is what they're
So,
showing, yes, sir.
So what we're saying, I think that's a good idea. It should be a public access road so they can get to the traffic light.
And I did discuss it again. I'm certain they're proposing emergency access because they don't want to get into substandard roadway improvements. Because it seems like Carlissimo and the north-south road, Elixon, it's probably not a standard roadway, and they don't want to incur that cost to improve it. So, but if they're showing a stub there, and if it's an emergency access, we can definitely pursue a proper access, full access.
I think that's what we're saying, because we probably will be taking not a good approach to that if they don't do it.
Can I ask Whitney, is that coming in as an MPUD?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, David.
Well, if it's coming in as an MPUD, the Planning Commission could basically force that to happen. You just remember when it comes in.
And we will.
Or staff could just require it, and we have to go through it.
Staff could require it before it ever gets to the Planning Commission.
Right. You might as well, because we will if you don't.
Yeah, save us the work.
And they'll need to be apprised of the new alignment that we're moving south.
But I think for this project,
On
you
this
probably need to
project.
have their interconnector moved up to line up with Carlissimo.
Yeah, we're going to look at that.
This is probably a silly question, but does anybody know the section of County Line Road that's going to 4 lanes? Is it divided? Is there a median opening there? I mean, we're talking for a long time about an interconnect, and if there's no median opening, they're gonna get there if they go to County Line Road anyways.
So they were asking about transportation stuff, and you guys are goofing off back here. I'm kidding about that.
The question is, what part of County Line Road is going to be 4 lane? Is this part of it?
The 4-laning that I was referring to in association with the traffic signal, is that the question?
No, the DOT project.
Oh, it generally fills in the gap between, currently, we go from 4 lanes to 2 east of Shady Hills Mariner, and it picks back up at 4 lanes west of Anderson Snow. So for that generally 3.5 mile segment, or probably 3 mile segment where it's 2 lanes would be the improvement. So it'll be 4 lanes consistently from the Suncoast over to where the 6-lane section picks up over to 19.
Is it divided?
Yes.
Is there a median opening at Carlissimo? Do you have any, I mean, at Alexon, do you have any idea?
I do not know.
Okay.
Have they even gotten that far?
I don't think the road has been designed.
It's not designed yet, okay.
That's what I was thinking.
All right. Wasn't sure where it stood.
Okay. Any other questions, Chris? Don?
But even if there is a median opening, I don't think that Hernando or Pasco are going to allow signals that close together.
No, I guess what I was getting at was if there's not a median opening there, people are gonna go up Alex into County Line, and they're gonna make a right and get to the signal, the same that they would do with the interconnect through Carlissimo.
Yeah, the only difference is that if you're turning to the right and then gonna have to make a U-turn, you're gonna have to cross 2 lanes, if you turn to the right, and that's where accidents happen.
The spacing would be in excess of a quarter mile, and that's just the width of that vacant property, the other property.
Yeah.
There's 2 lots to the west of the vacant property, and then whatever that distance would be between our western property line and the signal would add additional distance in there. So we're probably going to end up closer to somewhere between a quarter mile and a half mile.
It just feels safer if they can get to the traffic light and cross, in my opinion, rather than having to turn right and then whip over through 2 lanes and make a U-turn.
It would provide another option.
Okay, so you're gonna definitely configure your road, your connection road.
Yes,
to
we
line
are.
up with Carlissimo.
Yes, I mean, we're going to look at it, I mean, within reason, because it can meander some, and maybe it's better if it does, actually, for the subdivision to the west. So, straight shots tend to be not the best for that subdivision, so, but we'll look at it.
Okay.
And we'll,
Yeah,
certainly
well-
we understand the intent of what we need to accomplish.
I think to make it clear, Barbara, you should probably show some roadway that, don't just show an arrow, show like a conceptual roadway that kind of goes, that connects Carlissimo up to your future light.
Okay, yeah, there's a mobility plan on our MPD plan, we can add that too. Okay.
Okay, so then the southern one, the southern access will remain an emergency access, and that'll be gated.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Any from up here?
Just a comment, I think, we're doing good for the residents and for the developers, so it's all seems to be working out well.
Yeah, I think it would be. The truth is that no matter when you moved here, when you came here, there's always people that were here before you that wish you didn't come because you disturbed what they thought was a peaceful area. This area all at one time where your homes are was woods. And so unless you're in a position to buy the property and control it, something's going to happen to it. It can't just stay like it is. It's just not reasonable. And so we're trying to find the best solution for all parties concerned. So I appreciate everybody coming, the 2 of you in particular, asking questions and giving us a chance to try to make it better than it might it's gonna go from us to the county commission, and they'll be picking it apart too, so I suggest that you go there and make sure you get every question answered that you can. That meeting, we have the dates and the locations for, so we'll be happy to share that with you. But I'm sure Ms. Wilhite will be happy to meet with both of you separately or together and go over any of her thoughts and try to answer any questions that you may have in the meantime.
I have one additional question, maybe for David. I believe the individuals on existing Carlissimo that's now being considered as a through road for this are outside of the notification boundary for this project. So they wouldn't be here in the audience to discuss any opposition they might have to that connection as well. Do you want us to reach out to them for the board meeting on this one, or do you want them to wait to address it on the next one?
I mean, if we're counting on Carlissimo to help the residents that are complaining about this one, I think you should probably notify them before the board meeting.
Okay.
That there's at least give them whatever mailed notice you gave for this one, at least give them the same mailed notice.
Okay.
Okay.
But I mean, I think you probably only need to do it for the ones that are.
Yeah, just right on that.
Right on the road.
It's like maybe the two.
Looks like there's 3 lot owners that
intersection.
that are east of Alex and that would be impacted.
Okay. All right, anything else from the board up here? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve?
Is that with the caveat that they move their interconnect?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, we have a motion to approve the application with except for the modification that they move the interconnect to align with, what's the name of that road? Carlissimo, yeah. Carlissimo
Mr.
Road.
Chairman, I just want to add one more thing, that they just work with that developer to the west, for that interconnect also.
Yeah, when that application comes in, that's going to be pretty much our job.
Yeah, okay.
They're going to show a vision road going through there
Yeah.
anyway.
All right.
So, is there for any further discussion? We have a motion. I think we have a second, right? Yeah. Any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, the last item we have is P7, and Ms. Elizabeth Blair will take care of it.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Elizabeth Blair, Pasco County Attorney's Office. And this is the local planning agency's public hearing on proposed amendments to the Pasco County Land Development Code. It's an ordinance by the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners amending the Pasco County Land Development Code, ordinance number 89-21 as amended, providing for amendments to section 406.1 signs, section 601 traditional neighborhood development, section 1200 nonconformities, creating section 1203.4 nonconforming signs, amending appendix A definitions, providing for additional amendments as necessary for internal consistency, providing for applicability, repealer, severability, inclusion into the Land Development Code, modification, and an effective date. So the proposed reason for the amendments is as follows. First off, there is the constitutional law case, Reed of Town of Gilbert, a United States Supreme Court decision that our ordinance is not in compliance with. We're also effectuating the BCC's direction to allow digital signs in certain locations. And we're also updating 601.10, signs in special districts. We found some discrepancies in that part of our code as well that needs to be consistent with the Reed case as well as 406, the regular sign standards. And that's the area of the county like villages at Pasadena Hills and connected cities signage. We actually restructured 406.1 in its entirety for ease of use. And I actually have provided to you a table of contents of how it's restructured. This is actually very helpful. I brought this to our code compliance folks last week along with Denise Hernandez, who has worked extensively on this matter with me. And we think the new layout will make it easier to find things. It's a little more intuitive. So when we do actually look at the document itself, you'll see a lot of red line, and it's very thick and meaty because it's been moved around and rearranged, so the actual ordinance itself is only half the size, okay? We also clarified terminology throughout the sections and to provide stronger and better provisions for dealing with blight at the request of the commissioners. Language was also modified for legal reasons that help our code prosecuting attorneys with some of the cases they've had in the past. We've also moved non-conforming signs out of 406 into Chapter 1200 non-conformities. It seemed to make sense to be put all the other non-conformities in the LDC. And then we're new additional language added for prohibitions on materials, and then also maintenance standards for temporary signs are being proposed. We've added computation of sign shape and area, and then we also have created some non-substantial and substantial modifications to the unified sign plans, which we did not have before. On April 18th, 2022, the interested parties at the Horizontal Roundtable Group did review the documents in front of you, and we did not receive any comments. What I would like to propose to you, and of course it's up to you here, I don't know how much detail you want to get into on the ordinance, but what we could do, as I suggest, we could walk through the strike-through version, which you have in your civic clerk documentations there, and be able to go through that and kind of talk about what's been changed. That is, of course, the larger document, but because it shows the changes, it's easier for you all to see what's different. Before I go any further, do you have any questions or comments?
Ready? No.
Okay, all right. There is one other thing that I have added, so there's not enough here. After speaking with one of our commissioners, it was highly suggested that we create a section within this new proposed land development code sections that allow for neighborhood homeowners associations and condominium associations to have digital signage like we had created for CDDs several years ago, okay? So I do have language in front of all of you that I did come up with that addresses that commissioner's request, and it's modeled very heavily after what I had drafted for the CDDs a couple years ago, and that's in front of you also, okay? So as for the table of contents, it's kind of self-explanatory. We go from very general, basic statements of purpose and applicability and to what signs are exempt. Then you go in through the process of how you get an authorization for a sign. Keeping in mind, not all signs require authorization from the county. Some signs are just outright exempt from having to have a permit pulled. But then again, the signs you actually have to construct that have to go through some kind of a footer or building code standards for lighting, et cetera, those all have to have permits pulled. And there's a particular standard for that outside of our regular building permit process because you are dealing with constitutionally protected speech. So timelines are shorter and the standards are different for those kind of permits. We also have the prohibition on signs and materials, abandoned signs. We have a brand new provision called substitution non-commercial speech for commercial speech. That's yet another constitutional protection for the county and for a speaker who wants to take a commercial message and swap out non-commercial messaging instead without having to come to the county for permission to do so. So we've included that legal standard in our code. We also decided to put our permanent signs that are exempt from obtaining permits along with our temporary signs that don't require permits in the same area. They actually work together better that way. We have rearranged our digital sign standards. The section's kind of grown over the past couple of years. So Denise and I really had to get into it and rearrange everything and start with general standards before getting to the more details to make that section flow. So that section will look like it's entirely new when the standards are just being replaced in a new location, okay? We then, of course, have standards for residential district and non-residential. Nothing's changed there. Maybe some word tweaking for Reed, that's about it. And then the unified sign plans, just so you're aware, the unified sign plans are sign plans for entire communities or entire development. In fact, you've got opening up, I believe today, is the Crate commercial complex over there at the Groves. That is functioning under a unified sign plan. The idea for a unified sign plan is that you're allowed to kind of bend the regular rules and the standards adopted in the Land Development Code if you're doing something special. In an effort for space placemaking or a theming, we will let you have some variations. For example, I think the Crate, that was a Crate, but I did see their plan. I believe that Crate actually has upright crates with giant letters on them, which would certainly far exceed our sign code standards for other signage. So you get the idea of what a unified sign plan is for. It's that placemaking. So Denise crafted modifications to that, looking at whether or not they're substantial or non-substantial, because the process to get a unified sign plan initially is onerous. It requires a developer's agreement that's recorded, and it requires going to the Board of County Commissioners. So we wanted to carve out, when it's a non-substantial modification, that staff could approve it. So using the same standards roughly that she was accustomed to for MPUDs, we created a modification that was substantial and non-substantial. And then we can actually look at the document together if you'd like. If you want to bring up the document, that's the strike-through version. The first 10 pages roughly are whereas clauses, which we don't need to dwell on. This is just setting the standards for why we're enacting the laws that we're acting from a legal perspective and a fact-finding perspective on behalf of the county's protection, since we are regulating constitutional rights of speech, right? So in looking at the applicability, or the general statement, a lot of things you see in here, there's going to be small tweaks where you'll see a word is struck and replaced with a different word. We had Christy Sims from our office. I'm sure a lot of you know Christy and her work in code compliance. She's also really good with constitutional law. She actually helped with this document in any place that she knew she had to have a little more clarity or has seen how things have played out in our court system with some sign cases. We allowed her to go ahead and just make edits to stuff. So you'll see just little tweaks, and that's mostly Christie's stuff. And then we show also here we've moved non-conforming over to chapter 1200. Exempt signs, these are the same as they've been. They've just been relocated, so it looks like it's all new stuff. One thing that is new, though, is Pasco County, or all local governments, I should say, are preempted by Section 604.5 Florida statutes for farm signs. So the farmer's market does not have to come to the county for any sort of approval for a sign from here on out. So that's actually now called out in our land development code at the request of a commissioner. So other than that, the exempt signs should all be the same. There's a few tweaks to the authorization for signs. This is the whole permitting process. Once again, just a few things changed at Christie's request. And you go through very slight changes there. There is a new section that's being added in regards to signs on county property. The concept is for the county to be able to clearly be able to establish signs on its own property that are wayfinding signs. The idea is that tourism may want to, with some of their funds, be able to have their own little signage, their Florida Sports Coast branding logo on the signs, being able to point out different tourism attractors from the county's signage and the rights of way. So kind of creating a wayfinding program to help our visitors find locations. That would be a new thing for us. I mean, currently you see things that FDOT does. It would be a county program akin to that, specific to what we want to point out. So what we've decided to do to help our code compliance folks have a little more tools is we prohibit some materials. Clearly there are some types of materials for a permanent sign that just do not make sense. So we're prohibiting the use of non-durable materials such as paper, cardboard, fabric, vinyl, plywood, or unfinished materials when you have a permanent sign, which is kind of logical, but believe it or not, people were trying to use materials like this for permanent signs. We also have made it clear that signs that are prohibited, we're clarifying what some of the definitions are of signs that are prohibited, cleaning up some things to help our code officers. For example, just an easy one, how often do you see the wavy man blow up character, brightly colored in a commercial area? Well, technically that kind of sign could be prohibited under our existing prohibition on activated signs, but code wasn't always comfortable with that because that definition was so broad. So we've actually created a new category of air-blown devices, and that would be that kind of signage. So whether you like it or not, so that's what that means is, so you'll see that there are some things in here that have been expanded upon for code. We also have expanded the ordinance to recognize the feather banners and the feather banner situation in the county, that we've been asked to strengthen the code to be able to reduce the number of feather banners being used, especially the ones that are falling apart and they always end up slipping down like somebody's pants or something. So maintenance standards clearly would capture those sort of things, once again giving tools to code compliance. And we've also cleaned up the abandoned signs section. This actually came out of a case that Patrick Moore in our office had. And so language is being added to here to reflect the court's order in that case. And then next section comes up is that substitution of non-commercial speech for commercial speech. So we've got a paragraph in there about that. And then now you'll see some things moved around under the permanent signs, exempt from obtaining building sign permits, and temporary signs. Some things were moved around and put in other places. We still have the sandwich signs and window signs. It's just been placed elsewhere. And now under temporary signs, in an effort to, and at the direction of the Board of County Commissioners, to reduce the number of feather banners in the neighborhood, in communities and on commercial properties, the concept of classifying them as temporary signs and allowing you to have a feather banner, that's fine. You get a temporary sign. You can either have a sandwich sign, a regular temporary sign on little posts, a feather banner, a banner in general, all within size limitations. You can choose what your temporary sign's going to look like. But they also did tell us that if you are a user that has a digital signage, because now we're allowing for more digital signs, and we'll get to that a little later on in the ordinance. But if you're a business owner that has a digital sign, there would be a prohibition on the feather banner, because you now have the ability to have multiple messaging on that sign. You just runs the loop, how many messages you may want to have during the course of a day, a week, a month. So no longer do you need all these feather banners stuck in the ground. So you can put the message you would put on your feather banner on your actual digital signage, whether it's grand opening, whether it's e-cigars, whatever those banner signs are being used for.
Liz, what's a feather banner? I'm not
Those
sure
are
what that is.
sometimes they're called blade signs. They're the tall, like portable vinyl flag. You see them outside of lots of commercial businesses, gas stations.
Yeah.
They're on that rod. They fall down.
Right.
They don't stand up very well in the Florida sun. They seem to deteriorate pretty quickly, some of them. So those are the kind of things that are easy, low-hanging fruit to clean up if you just give your code officers the ability to say, hey, it's in disrepair, take it down, or you've got too many of them, So. And then we have standards now for maintenance of temporary signs, once again, the feather banner example, but allowing our code to actually say, hey, it's got to come down, it's broken. If they believe that there's some safety issues, they can go ahead and remove the sign themselves. And we then had to, when I spoke about cleaning up for the Reed case, the Reed case, without going into great detail, basically said that you had to treat all entities using these temporary signs in the same manner. So you couldn't tell the church they could only have a sign out on Sunday mornings that's 2x4, and then allow the politician to have a sign that's 8x6 for 10 weeks. So you had to have fair rules across the board. So that's what we've done. And in doing the fair rules across the board, there's no longer the need for categories of signs, like a real estate sign. I no longer need to call out a real estate sign and what that is and how long it can be there for, because it's a temporary sign. It's going to go up 15 days prior to whatever the event is, and it's going to come down 5 days after. So in the case of a real estate sale, If you're about to list the house, you're going to put the sign, you can put the sign up 15 days in advance. The house sells, and you got 5 days to take the sign down. You're running for office. You're going to go and you're going to qualify for your office, and 15 days prior to doing your paperwork with the clerk or the supervisor of elections, you can put your signs up. After your election's over, you take them down within 5 days. So you see that we're having these general standards across the board for different types of signs. You no longer need to call out signs. So I've deleted real estate sign, construction sign, menu signs, things that just you no longer need. Any questions so far? Any more? No, you're good? Okay. Hopefully I'm not boring you all too much.
You're doing good.
What?
You're doing good, Liz.
You have a question, Roberto? Yes. Oh, okay, go ahead.
More of a comment along the lines what she's saying is the easy way of looking at this is think about what we regulate is location, time, and manner. We cannot regulate content. That's against the freedom of speech amendments. So if you think about location, time, and manner, and then think about what she's saying, that's why we're going for it.
Thank you. So we have a new concept that I hit on briefly, sign shape and area computation. Some signs out there are different pieces, like the PDQ drive-through comes to mind, where they got the big P and a D and a Q and they're not touching each other. So this is to help staff when they're reviewing sign applications, like, okay, well, how do I determine that that's the right size? We're allowed to do that under our code. So there's this new little standard there, which we actually had over in section 600 in the traditional neighborhood design. I had no idea, so I moved it over here as well. We also then move into digital signs. The intent and purpose of the digital signs is basically to allow multiple messaging, like I said. Our board has directed that we open the categories of where they're allowed beyond tourism attractors and the CDDs to actually allow them to be used in zoning districts that are office, commercial, and industrial. So we've expanded that, and what they want us to do is use our existing standards. For example, you can get a 12-foot tall monument sign right now, and you can take that sign, and instead of putting in your sign face, you can plop in digital right now. So that's kind of how that works. The signs aren't any bigger. You're just allowed now to have that digital display on the sign where you couldn't before. Okay? So there are standards that we've had about it has to be static exchange, a dwell time of no less than 15 seconds. A dwell time is how long each individual message is actually visible, okay? That signs can't be interactive, they can't resemble warning signs, so forth. That's all existing stuff from prior digital requirements. Just looks like it's new because, like I said, I had to rearrange everything to make it make sense better. Of course, we control the brightness and light trespass. They can't be auditory. They can't emit any sounds. There has to be, of course, someone on-call contact with the county in case there is a glitch, because they can become, a problem if they start flashing in the middle of the night or something, right? So we then move into our different categories of digital signs. The regional attractors, that was the first one we've had. We created that for, and actually only one entity has actually used that, and that's the fair. You see the fair out here on 52, you drive past that. They've actually, were the first to do digital under this section when we adopted this. But the Advent ice sheets could do this. It's large enough, they have events there. There's different places that could use that haven't used it yet that might. And then the new categories that we've added on for the digital are after CDDs. Okay, so after the CDD is where that homeowners association and condo association language would best fit. And like I explained, it mirrors what we've already adopted for CDDs. So I would just be inserting this right between pages 28 and 29, and that would be to address those particular communities that do have a need for additional messaging, like almost like a CDD does. They collect assessments, they have annual meetings or monthly meetings, they have events they schedule for their folks, and these signs would be on their property focused just at their residents, not visible from outside the community, just like for the CDDs. And then the standards, like I said, for Office, commercial, industrial would be like your regular standard sign sizes and citing requirements, just to have a swap out of the static for a digital phase. And then the standards for signs in residential districts pretty much stayed the same. We did want to address the oddity, not really an oddity, probably more common than not, of when you have a non-residential use actually in a residential zoning area like a church, okay? We want them to be able to have signs, but not the big signs, and we also don't want them to have digital, because once again, they're in the wrong zoning, they're in residential. So we clarified that in here as well for that.
Elizabeth, while you're on the topic, I have a question.
Sure.
So, I assume you're talking about the rules on page 31, it's subsection D.
Uh-huh.
So, is that, if it's a home-based business, is that the rule they follow?
A home-based business might be covered elsewhere in the code, David. I'll have to look into that.
Well, because the reason I'm asking is because there is, in the special districts section, there's a specific section called home-based business that says, it's on page 51. It says.
Okay, now you're back over in chapter 600, yeah. The special districts, we were going to, this is Denise and I talking, we wanted to regulate all signage for special districts where they have that mixed use component going on, where you can be next to commercial, next to residential, by using the standards in 600 because the signs are smaller and less intrusive.
Right.
So that would be a home-based business in 600, but a regular home-based business I don't think is covered by this at all. I think it's over in our home-based business section.
That's my confusion.
Okay.
Is it's clearly addressed in the special districts, how the sign you can have for a home-based business. But as you know, there was legislation recently passed that allows home-based businesses almost anywhere.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out what a home-based business can do when you're not in a special district. And I can't tell whether that's governed by.
Yeah, let me look into that, and I'll get with Denise, because I'm pretty sure that home-based business still stands alone and has some kind of signage allotment just over there. And what section would that be in? You guys don't know? Maybe it's in miscellaneous uses or something? Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
I don't know that the requirements should be more stringent in special districts than they are in the rest of the county.
Right.
I would actually think special districts might be less stringent because they're mixed use.
Mm-hmm.
I bet if it's the rules on it's on page 31, those seem less stringent than what's allowed in the special district.
The rules on 31 paragraph D are to handle the non-residential use, like the treatment care facility or a church, something like that that's not a home-based business. It's an actual business, but you're in residential zoning.
My concern is if D is the only thing governing home-based businesses, then
it's too big.
That's too big of a sign.
Right.
And it should be something more comparable to what you allowed in the special district section.
Right, and I'll look into that. Thank you. Absolutely.
Because I don't see home-based businesses called out anywhere specifically in the
Right.
general code.
I don't think it is, frankly. Okay, I'll look into that. Another addition is that we're going to put it in black and white that you have to have your street address numbers on your signs. Apparently, that seems to be a problem on US 19. It's been a headache for folks and code officers, so now we're actually regulating that, and that's actually going to be retroactive. So you got to put some numbers up if you haven't already. In the next section about ground signs, nothing has changed here. Nothing has changed in wall signs, projecting signs, awning signs, none of that. Signs internal to non-residential development is still the same. I had to change some verbiage a little. Unified sign plans are voluntary. We made that clear. And then, of course, if you move through that, you see that there are prohibited signs in USPs. It's not a free-for-all 100%. You just can push the rules a little. And we then added to the back of that the modifications to the USP. That begins on page 42. And it's nicely written by Denise. And then we also have, in the world of signs, if your sign code is struck down, you want it to be very, very clear that everything is severable, and that if anything else is struck down, this one little lone part remains. That's on page 44. We've had this in our land development code in one shape or form for probably, I would say probably a good 16 years. That's going to be the default signage in Pasco County should everything else get shot down by some court someday. We have our enforcement sign with some modifications to help code out. And then we go into the chapter 600. I see there's some typos there. And this section was interesting. We actually didn't even realize it existed because, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but we've never really used the TND provisions of our land development code for anything. There's like long leaves and MPUD. We never really had anyone straight outright do this.
There may have been a few projects that qualify for T&D, but I don't remember them specifically.
Yeah, so we actually found a sign section within it and thought, well, that's interesting. And some of it needed to be fixed due to the Reed case. Some of it didn't make any sense and was kind of redundant. So we went ahead while we were in the sign world, cleaned this up. And like I said, this makes sense when you're doing a special district for VOPH to use these standards because they're more appropriate to that form of development. And then we have, after that, just some definitions that are cleaned up. Okay, there's a home-based business sign on page 51, David, and that is the 6.0. That's just for the TND, like you were saying. But that could very well be the standard that we put elsewhere if we like it.
That was my only point, is that it's clear in the special districts how you're handling their signage, but it wasn't clear to me how you're handling it in the rest of the county.
And yeah, maybe we just take that same standard and put it over there too. Okay. We have then some definitions we had to clean up in 600. They actually had their own definitions, kind of interesting. And non-conforming signs on page 62, you might find this interesting. Some of this already was in the sign code, but got moved out to here. We have a new standard that you cannot have a new permanent sign permitted on a parcel while you have a non-conforming sign on the parcel. An example would be if you've got an existing commercial business that has a roof sign, which is a prohibited sign, and you want to come in and build a monument sign, you'd have to take down that roof sign. And we also won't let you convert to digital if you have a non-conforming sign on your property. The structural damage, 50%, more than 50% or more, that's standard. Altered, that's standard non-conforming language. Removal directions on how that has to be finished. And then this is kind of just one that I came up with, and it's this exemption. It seems to me like maybe you can have a non-conforming sign that has some sort of value to it. And the sign that comes to my mind in Pasco is the Gulfview Square Mall sign. It's hideous, but it's like from the 60s. I mean, it's non-conforming, but there's something maybe historical about it. Or in another jurisdiction, you've got the Frisch's Big Boy. I mean, there's something to be said for these older signs. And if there is something interesting out there, and I don't know, someone's discretion, maybe it's dangerous language, I don't know, but it just seemed that it was worthy to acknowledge that these things might exist so they could continue to exist as a non-conforming sign. You know?
Time out for a minute. 1960 was not that far back.
It's that mall, though. I mean, seriously. How old is the Gulfview Square Mall? You must know this, Chuck.
She looks at me.
Well, because you live in that part of Pasco and always have.
Yeah, it's mid-70s.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funky non-conforming sign. But does that mean that they, have to take it down? I don't know. It's just an idea. All right, and then we have our definitions, and it's just basic cleanup to make things clearer, to create definitions for things like air-blown devices, to, Christy went through these, and because she had known that sometimes in going through her code compliance cases that there was a little bit of vagueness in that definition that she would get caught up on. So she cleaned up these for us, created some new ones that she needed. Some of them went away, and basically that is it. The work has taken a significant amount of time because it's a big project, and it's the kind of project that when you set it down and walk away because some other priority comes up, it takes you months to get back to where you were, you know, because it's such a brain thing, right? So this has been laying around through different processes for the past couple of years at least, and we think that it's good to go forward. It's been vetted in-house, it's gone to the horizontal roundtable, it's been looked at by various folks, it's been looked at by the commissioners.
Elizabeth, speaking of looking at it, has anybody who actually makes digital signs looked at the technical requirements for the digital signs to make sure that they can actually build a digital sign that meets these technical requirements?
Nobody has looked at them that I'm aware of, but they've also been in existence for, what, the past 5 years? But, I mean, I have no problem having someone look at it.
Well, okay, I didn't realize, so these are not new requirements for the
It
technical?
only looks like it's new because I rearranged. The only thing that's new is the zoning categories and the HOA and the condo association stuff.
So somebody's already been building digital signs that comply with these requirements?
The fair is the only one that I'm aware of. Now, there may be other digital signs out there that I'm just not aware of.
But I guess the fair sign complies with these requirements?
Yeah, our staff processed it, so.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're not giving the promise of a digital sign and then there's nobody that can
Actually
meet the
make
technical requirements of it.
Right, no, I mean, I have heard nothing. Like I said, it's been in place for a couple of years. Now, it's unfortunate I don't have, like, Vanessa here. She would know if there's been digital signs processed, but, you know, it's been in very limited categories, and they haven't taken us up on it. So, it's the expense, too. It's very, very expensive, you know.
For your information, we have one in our community that we put up, and it's a very attractive sign. I think it's been up for probably 2 years now.
Yeah, under the provision we wrote for you.
And the only thing I would like to make a comment about that is I think you have, in the code, it needs to be very strict that the sign messages be directed towards the community itself. In other words, community-sponsored organizations. One of the things that we had to do finally was to pass a particular ruling for our sign that you tend to get people wanting to come in there, hi, I'm having a bake sale this much, or I'm with the XYZ corporate company and I want to put the sign up for. We have made the signage there, and I would encourage you to look at that, is to make it very strict. Otherwise you get
Yeah, but here's the problem. County can't control that speech, but because it's your sign owned by your CDD and you use it in your proprietary capacity, you can make the rules for your sign. But the county can't tell you what's allowed on your sign. That's then, I'm censoring speech then. I can't do that. Now, I can say directed to the community. I can say, and I tried doing that in the HOA document, and maybe it's a good thing to take a look at right now. In the HOA document, I refer to non-commercial.
What page is that? What page is that?
It's that loose one laying around that I gave to you that has the letter N.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in between 28 and 29. Now, I was sitting there thinking about it this morning, and I had taken some scribbled notes from a conversation I had with Jeff Steinsteiner last week. And I got the idea in my brain from my notes that I wrote is to allow non-commercial digital display on signs in limited situations. You know, that's as far as I can go as a county regulator. That you guys have to, it's just like your policies for whether or not you're going to let somebody rent your community center for a garage sale. You know, I struggle the same thing with my CDD, but we have our own rules on how our property is to be used, and that's your sign, you know?
I agree with you to a certain extent, but I think what we did, we used the county's ordinance and the digital sign part to come up and to make it a very strict, narrow rule for usage. Just as if you read through your county one, you said time, the number of seconds message
Well,
to be in place.
do not have a, okay, though, hang on, the standards that, the other digital signs would apply, standards apply to CDDs as well, like the dwell time, all of those rules still apply to your sign.
Okay.
Okay, maybe that's not clear, and I could certainly try and make that clear, and if you want me to put, like I'm trying to for the HOA, this non-commercial messaging, I can add that to the CDD. I mean, that's probably as far as I could go. Okay, I have no problem doing that.
that. Because what it does, it allows the staff at those facilities to decline people coming in to use it or requesting signage. We live on a golf course, and so we get a lot of people want to use both the golf course, which is privately owned.
Right.
And ours, which is publicly owned, who hold events at one facility, which is the private one, and now they want to put the signage on the public one. So we used that ruling, and the board felt that it was a way to allow staff to say no rather than bring it to the board every time somebody requests something.
Okay,
So it's a time management issue too.
I do want to point one more thing out that will maybe help you guys. If you look at page 28 of the strike-through version, at the very bottom, under citing requirements, it says signs containing digital display must comply with all applicable requirements of section 406.1.8 general standards. And I'm going to make sure that internal site's correct. But all of the other stuff that comes before here that deals with lighting not being directed skyward, static loop only, dwell time of 15, that's all that stuff applies to your sign as well.
Correct.
Okay, all right, I want to make sure you knew that. As well as the size. Anything that's not specifically carved out in the CDD, all the other general stuff, location, setback, any of that thing. The only thing that's going to be different is when there's a carve out specific to the CDD. So they need to be able to know to go back and look at the introductory section of digital and look at all the general standards as well. Okay, that will help. Okay, anyone else now?
Yeah, just a question about schools. Has anything changed with that, or we just
We haven't
still keep
touched
doing it?
schools.
Okay, that's what I thought.
No, we decided we didn't want to, since we didn't do that 20 years ago, to start now. Now's not the time.
Okay.
Maybe next year.
Yep, all right. Not to open up a can of worms, but would we be similar to a government? Because I'm thinking like the library. Would, you know,
You mean the joint library?
no, just about signage. You go by a library, there's signage there. I would just think there's something like that. And I think what we're doing now is fine, but with, you know, just keep doing what we're doing.
We'll see.
But isn't there a general exemption for government signs?
Okay, yeah, there's a distinction. I mean, this is really going to go down some rabbit holes. Government.
We don't have to go down too far, but
But,
maybe a minute or two.
So schools, we've had this conversation in years past. The school is subject to the county's land development code. Whether or not we actually force you guys is one thing. We know the colleges have their own plans, so they're kind of, they have their own plans, so they do whatever they want. We also know you have your own building standards, so you get a pass on vertical stuff. So it's kind of this weird area that no one wants to be definitive on. When it comes to government signs are anything from a stop sign to a street sign to the Pasco County Utilities building sign to the West Pasco government. I mean, it's a wide variety of different types of signs. And technically, none of that are actually signs because it's government speech. So we don't even have to reference government-owned and used signs in here. And actually, there's a really great sign attorney named Susan Trevarethon. And her recommendation is don't even mention government because you have the government speech doctrine. You're not even a sign. You're a different entity of your own. And I think the school district would probably argue the same thing because you are a government, that it's government speech. Right. But I just kind of I talked to Christy and I'm like, do you want me to carve out government signs? And she said, no, leave it alone. Don't go there.
Okay, well, but
what do you want?
Elizabeth, there actually is something in your code.
Yes.
F6 that says it has an exemption for government signs.
That's existing. She didn't want me, that's just been moved around. That's why it looks like it's new. It's always been there.
But what I'm saying is you're not eliminating the exemption for government signs.
Say that again?
You still have an exemption for government signs.
Right. We're just not going to mess with it. We didn't see the need to.
I guess what I'm saying is to answer Richard's question, it seems like there is an exemption for his sign, school sign.
Right, because it's government. That would be on page 10, number 6, Richard, if you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And so we purposely did not allow community development district signs to be included, even though you are a government, because we wanted you to be subject to the rules, which is the standards for digital and location and so
I think
forth.
Richard's main question is, do we consider the school district to be a government under that exemption?
We can consider it to be a government. We can do the same thing with FDOT and we can federal building, anything like that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he definitely needs to come under the rules. He's a rule breaker, I can see.
Right? So
Elizabeth, can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
And I apologize, I was out of town. In fact, I was out of state, so I hadn't not had an opportunity to read these. Let's address the issue about mobile signs. There is a individual that I think has a mobile business, and he has signage on his vehicle.
Is it the digital box trucks?
Yes, yes. How will that be handled? Or is
That's
there
being
any-
ignored by this.
It's
This
being
code does
ignored
not.
now?
This code does not address that.
Could I ask that? Never mind, I won't ask
I mean,
that.
there's reasons for it. You know, it's one thing to say, okay, you're a sign, you need a building permit, you got to be located there. And if you're not giving a building permit, we're not permitting those trucks. We don't have a permitting structure for them. And I don't know what the basis to prohibit them would be, because taxis can advertise things all day long on the sides of them. You've got people that wrap their cars, you know, to get paid to advertise for somebody. They have their own business wrap. The only thing different is that box truck has a message that changes, and that's brighter. We could set standards for brightness, you know, but we haven't done that. We do have standards for brightness already in here that maybe applies to a moving vehicle. I don't know if that does, you know, if it's appropriate or not. Maybe that standard should be something lower because they are moving.
I would suggest that from a safety standpoint, that while it's driving down the road, somebody might be, oh, look at that sign.
Yeah,
here,"
I've
and
seen
I-
Well, but I think, to Elizabeth's point, then it's not a land development regulation anymore. We're not
Right.
regulating.
That's pretty cool.
You're regulating what goes on somebody's vehicle, which is probably something the state should be regulating from a safety perspective. The county doesn't regulate what goes on vehicles
The
in general.
the only vehicle sign regulation that we have is when you purposely take your vehicle and you put it up on the side of the road and it's functioning as a sign, but we don't enforce that. I mean, it would just, there's language in here about vehicle signs like that.
But those signs are static. In other
I know.
words, you look at it quickly, buses, you know,
Right.
years ago when I was on one of the mobility ones, they did not advertise on buses for Pasco County. And I think Pat Malari and others, you know, pushed for that a little bit. Well, the signs are on the buses now. So I look at it as a static as opposed to the mobile digital signs that constantly change. And so I see it as a safety issue personally.
Yeah, no, I agree that would be the angle to come at it as a safety issue, but that's not what's being addressed here. To the extent that safety issues is being addressed in the world of digital, it's for the ones that are actually a sign.
So the vehicle signs that are in the list of prohibited, we can.
Right, and there's a
construe that as being
definition.
When they park.
Yeah, some vehicles that had signage wrapped up on them, maybe things attached to them outside of the regular line of the vehicle, like balloons and all kinds of crap, that were sitting out on the edge, you know, by the right-of-way to advertise a business. That kind of stuff code has gone after in the past, but I don't think it's a regularly done thing. But now with these other tools about inflatable devices and air-blown devices and too many feather banners, they could much more easily, instead of looking at the vehicle and saying, that's a vehicle sign, they could just say, take all that stuff down, you know? So they've got flexibility for
So
enforcement.
question, when someone, and it's common, I think, with realtors, at least one individual I can think of, where they have a truck, and it's large, it's a panel truck, and they park it in front of the business, and it's, for all intents and purposes, stationary.
Yeah, and that's the kind of vehicle signs I'm talking about. You see restaurants doing that. You
Yes.
see it happen all the time. Code has other things to worry about. If they wanted to actually go and say you're using your vehicle inappropriately, go park it in the back, it's few and far between. I mean, I remember years ago that kind of being an issue. It's not really a hot button right now, you know.
Elizabeth, were you just reading a definition of vehicle sign? What
Yeah,
were you
there's
reading?
one back on page 71.
Fif- 51.
It's on what page? I'm sorry.
Page
71,
71.
71.
Item number 51.
You know, and I'm not entirely sure when Christie would use this and for what kind of factual scenario to seek a violation of our code. I honestly don't know.
Well, that's why I'm trying to find the definition. I'm just wondering whether, let's see, hold on.
It's actually the very last page on my packet.
Okay, now I see it.
She actually was in a meeting with our code officers when I was going through this with them a week and a half ago. And those lit box trucks came up. One of the officers wanted to know if those were a problem under the digital provisions. And Christie said, nope, leave them alone, don't touch them, you know. So,
To me, they're a safety issue.
I mean, that would be the angle.
So this definition, it basically says that it has to be parked, basically.
Mm-hmm. So you're using it as a sign, which could be the realtor's sign that sits there for a month and doesn't move. It's just a matter of, is someone complaining? Is someone, you know?
It just seems inconsistent with the intent to control and manage signage when someone can evade that completely by simply having a panel truck and park it in their parking lot.
Well, but I think what I'm hearing Elizabeth say is if it falls in this definition of vehicle sign on page 71, it's prohibited.
Right. So you're not supposed to be doing it.
So I think as long as if it's there parked, that would be a prohibited sign. What's not prohibited is apparently if it's driving around.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And the fact that something is prohibited, I mean, we have, 18 code officers, and they're not going to just stop, you know. It's complaint driven, and it's kind of the hot buttons, you know, and there's certain type of signage that really hasn't been, you know, a problem, and then sometimes it is, you know.
Well, I think you should report them. I'm a realtor, I don't have one.
Well, Elizabeth, the only thing I would maybe suggest, talk to Christie about is whether you should put the duration that it's parked somewhere in the definition.
Okay.
Just because,
Without that,
I mean, because somebody could, I mean, they might happen to just be parked there for 2 minutes. I mean,
Right.
I mean, and shopping, you know what I mean? There should be some minimum duration where we're saying that now it's effectively operating like a sign,
Right.
as opposed to they're just parked in the spot.
Right.
Because if we allow them while they're driving around, at some point they have to park and
Right.
Go to
eat or
Publix.
whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they might just be parking to go to Publix. That shouldn't really necessarily be prohibited. Otherwise, we've effectively prohibited them from driving around.
Right. They
Does
could
that make
never
sense?
stop.
So I think there should be some duration
Okay.
that it's parked before we'll consider it a vehicle sign.
Is there any other questions? This is actually a public hearing, so you'd need to open it for public comment. And then,
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth and staff, I mean, kudos for, I mean, you guys did a good job. There's a lot, I mean, that's a lot of work and a lot of detail in this thing.
Right.
Yeah, very good job. Is there any comment from the public?
okay.
Okay. I guess you must have done a great job, because nobody questioned.
People left, I don't know. So we would
I know.
ask for a
It
motion
sort of
to
hurt my
find it
feelings, I don't know about you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Denise wished she could have been here today. She went to the Sterling Conference, and she is happy to see this move forward too, I'm sure.
All right, thank you.
Move to adjourn?
Just before you do that, I just want to make one announcement. I have a daughter who recently picked up her master's degree from Harvard. So,
congratulations.
Wow.
I hate to say this to you, but there are so many attorneys graduating from Harvard. I saw at least 500 in that class.
Well, Harvard has one of the largest graduating law school classes in the country.
A lot.
My school only had like 175, but they have like 500.
Well, that's because your school only took the best, right?
I went to Cornell, it's not Harvard.
There you
but
go.
Good school.
You went
It's
to
an
a
Ivy
quality
League school, I guess. But I preferred a smaller school. I
That's right.
didn't want to go to a school with 500 people.
Jeez.
That's right.
Humongous.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I second it. Move, adjourn.
Okay, motion adjourned.
Aye.
Now then she can start paying you back.
Yeah.
Pasco County waterways and wildlife depend on you to keep them healthy. Excess fertilizer, grass clippings, trash, oils, and pet waste wash into gutters and storm drains when it rains. Stormwater carries these pollutants directly into our lakes and rivers, creating an unhealthy environment for fish, waterfowl, and other aquatic animals. Storm drains are meant for clean rainwater. Most other